In the north of the country lies one of 3 national parks in Rwanda. I went there to see what thousands of other tourists come to Rwanda for every year. The mountain gorillas of Rwanda are the rarest apes in the world, and if it wasn't for the actions of Dian Fossey, they would probably all now be extinct. Because Diane stood up to the poachers and created the first mountain gorilla conservation program, she was murdered in 1986. Diane now rests alongside those she tried to save. As we began our trek up to see one of the original groups Fossey researched, we really began to experience gorillas in the mist. The hike began in the farmers' fields at an altitude of over 10,000 feet, and soon we made it to the newly erected wall which runs along the perimeter of the park. The loss of the gorillas' habitat is certainly a major factor as to why they are in such trouble. This wall is just one small step towards the preservation of that habitat. The little jungle which remains is lush and thick, and is a welcome break from the rest of the over-farmed hillsides. After around 3 hours of trekking, we spotted the telltale tracks of gorillas, foliage trampled down in the direction of their movement, and good old-fashioned dung. My heart began to soar, and I wondered how long it would be before I saw our first wild gorilla. Now it could be at any time, around any turn, or in any tree. 4 hours in, and we spotted our first hairy beast up in a tree. Gorillas protect the group by placing guards around their perimeter, and in the past, initial contacts were tense, but they are now quite used to humans, and the guard practically ignored us. People always ask how close I got to them. Well, this close, and closer still. Sometimes too close for comfort, and my emotions were mixed between joy and fear. I soon found myself alone with the guide, surrounded by a whole group of teenagers. Before I knew it, one of them had run out and hit our guide. Of course, now I was very frightened, as I'd heard of a mountain gorilla's rage. There are stories of people being chased down the mountain and beaten to a pulp, lucky to escape with their lives. The #1 rule, though, is never run. Easier said than done. A gorilla's charge is always just a bluff. They simply want you to know that they are in charge. If you run, then it tells them that you meant them some kind of harm. So they chase you down and maul you. Another rule is don't stare at the gorillas. Makes sense. I mean, who really likes being stared at anyway? So I was a little nervous about how this guy would react to a camera in his face when he feels like making a point. As soon as it all began, it was over, and the gorillas returned to their rough-and-tumble play antics, reminding me that these were just a bunch of teenagers looking to wrestle. The theory of evolution suggests that humans evolved from relatives of these apes. There is no doubt that these gorillas look very familiar. But is there anything we can learn from them about ourselves? Dian Fossey learned that they live in very complex social groups, just like humans, and have exactly the same stereotypes. There's the boss, the want-to-be boss, the queen bee, and the wannabes, the only child, the oldest child, the middle child, and the youngest child. There's the bully, and the kid that always gets picked on. There's the hyperactive individuals, and the very lazy ones. Almost every single kind of human personality has its place in the gorilla society. These groups are called families, and usually have around 8 members, but some are so large they can have up to 60 at a time, that they are really more like communities. Scientists believe it was just this kind of community which helped us learn language and evolve to have the most powerful brains on Earth. The need to communicate with each other helped pass on valuable information, like when certain foods were coming into season, how to catch those tasty ants with a twig, and how to build a supercomputer. If it wasn't for our ability to communicate, we would have no way of passing any of our knowledge on to the next generation. Fossey was determined to crack this language, and her findings prove invaluable when working with the gorillas. Mountain gorillas look very similar to their cousins, the lowland gorillas, but they have adapted to have a much thicker fur coat due to the cold temperatures here at such a high altitude. Aren't they cute? Many people think so, and not long ago, a few of the very wealthy used to hire poachers to capture one so they could have it as a pet. Mountain gorillas are one of the most protective species on the planet. If you try to take one of their babies, the whole group will attack to protect it, gladly risking their own lives. As a result, the whole group has to be killed in order to capture just one baby. In Fossey's Gorillas in the Mist, she describes the heart-wrenching moment when her favourite gorilla, Digit, gave up his own life to save the rest of the group from poachers. Jane Goodall has witnessed the same kind of altruism from chimpanzees. What drives this emotion? Is it the natural urge to preserve the species, or is it empathy? Until recently, scientists have always associated empathy as a purely human trait. But now, many are questioning whether one aspect of what makes us human might not be only reserved for us.